When the people of Munich need to cool off on hot summer days, they go to a lake. There are a lot of lakes in the south of Munich, and I thought I'd go to one and show you what you can see and do. It's also quite fitting that I'm introducing you to Lake Starnberg as the first lake, because until 1962 it was called Würmsee and was then named after the town of Starnberg for tourist reasons. The river Würm is an outflow of the lake, which also flows through the Munich in the west. The last ice age in the Alpine region, which began 115,000 years ago, is named after it, the Würm glacial period. When the glaciers retreated 12,000 years ago, the glaciers left behind a glacial tongue basin that filled with water. Lake Starnberg is therefore a glacial lake. It is the fifth largest lake in Germany, but due to its water depth of up to 128 meters, it is the second most water-rich lake in Germany. As I said, you simply have to take the 6 train to get to Starnberg. You can also get off at the next 4 stops until the final stop, Tutzing. But I'll come to that later in the video. Starnberg is a good choice, because the stop is right next to the landing stage for the boats. Starnberg is considered the richest municipality in Germany. The numerous villas, especially near the shore, bear witness to this. I took a boat to cross over to Berg. You buy tickets directly on the ships. They cost differently depending on the trip. I bought a day ticket with the entry to the Buchheim Museum, which cost €34.30. If you travel by public transport, you also get a 5% discount. There are single trips, large and small round trips, all a bit complicated, but I'll link to the providers below. The next stop, Berg, is closely linked to the history of King Ludwig II, the fairy tale king of Neuschwanstein Castle. After his private building addiction became more and more rampant, he was incapacitated at the behest of the Bavarian government. The expert opinion on his incapacitation was written by the psychiatrist Bernried von Gudden. He took the king into custody at Neuschwanstein Castle on June 11, 1886. The king was then taken to Berg Palace for further treatment. Unfortunately, the palace is not open to the public, but at least I was able to film it from the boat on the way back. The path to the next landing stage in Leonie is only half an hour away and mostly leads through a beautiful forest path. The votive chapel is located halfway along the route. On June 13, 1886, at 6 p.m. the king and his psychiatrist von Gudden set off for a walk. Neither of them returned from the walk. At around 8 p.m. gendarmes were sent out to search for the missing man. Around 10 p.m. the bodies of the 2 men were found in water that was only knee-deep. What really happened on that summer night is still the subject of wide speculation. The official version is that King Ludwig went into the lake with suicidal intent. His psychiatrist von Gudden tried to stop him from doing so, which led to a fight in which both men died. Of course, there are numerous conspiracy theories surrounding the death of Ludwig II today. It will probably never be possible to find out what really happened. Today there is a simple wooden cross in the water where the bodies were found. Above it is the votive chapel that was erected 10 years after Ludwig's death in his memory. In Leonie I got back on the next boat and transferred to the western bank to Possenhofen. Ludwig's cousin Elisabeth, who later became Empress of Austria, spent a large part of her youth here in the palace. The palace is now privately owned and not open to the public. However, there were some large holes in the hedge that I was able to film through. Half an hour's walk off Possenhofen is the only island in Lake Starnberg, the Rose Island. For €5 a small ferry takes you across the island every quarter of an hour. As the name suggests, the island is home to a magnificent rose garden and many large beautiful old trees. in the middle of the island, is the so-called casino, a small villa that King Maximilian II had built here. For an additional €5, you can also take part in a short guided tour of the casino. But I decided not to do this that day. You are not allowed to enter the shore area on the island, as the remains of stilt houses from the Neolithic period have been found in the water. Of course, also to protect the water birds that breed here. With buildings dating back to 5000 BC, Rose Island is one of the oldest human settlements in Bavaria. From Rose Island I walked further south to Tutzing. This took me quite a long time, although the path was actually very beautiful and led through forests and parks. Incidentally, swimming is allowed almost everywhere else on Lake Starnberg, unless it is expressly forbidden, for example because there are fishing spawning grounds there. But these are usually places that are not so beautiful anyway. There are also designated lidos where there are lifeguards, perhaps the wise idea if you are traveling with non-swimmers or children. If you just want to swim at Lake Starnberg, then it's best to go straight to Tutzing anyway. I have found many beautiful bathing spots here. But of course you can also do other water sports at Lake Starnberg, such as renting a boat. You can find boat rentals everywhere. You need a sailing license for sailing boats, but not usually for motorboats. But I don't want to say anything wrong here, so it's best to find out for yourself. But after all that walking, I got hungry. A pretzel with 2 sausages had to do it for now. But you can also eat really well here. Near Tutzing, for example, there is a beautiful Bavarian beer garden, and there are also many top-class restaurants with beautiful lake views all around the lake. And better than eating a sausage is actually ordering a freshly caught whitefish. I got on the boat again in Tutzing and traveled to Bernried. When you arrive in Bernried, you quickly realize that it's all about art. The Buchheim Museum, named after his founder Lothar Günther Buchheim, is located here. And if the name doesn't ring a bell, you may be familiar with one of the most successful German films, Das Boot. It is based on Buchheim's stories, which he collected as a war correspondent on board a German submarine. Fortunately, the weather at Lake Starnberg is much friendlier than in the North Sea. Later in life, Buchheim was an active art collector and his collection is on display here today. The collection includes works by Otto Dix, Emil Nolde and Max Pechstein. But it is also an ethnological museum where you can find works of art from all over the world. You will also find art made of glass and some very curious things. My alarm bell started ringing when I realized that the last boat from Bernried was leaving around 5 p.m. So I made a mistake that you can easily avoid. If you want to do a similar tour on Lake Starnberg as I did, then take the boat all the way south first. From there, you can then slowly head north again with stops in between. From Tutzing at the latest, you can take a relaxed approach to the day. If you missed the last boat, you can simply take the S-Bahn back to Munich from there. So cheers, I'm done here with Lake Starnberg. I'm now going back to Tutzing, where I have one last thing to do. You have to subscribe and like if you like the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Well, I jumped into the water in Starnberg and not in Tutzing.
Oh, thank you for watching my video. Subscribe, like, and I see you in the next video.
And of course important, my homepage and my email address if you want a guided tour through Munich or the surrounding area.